The night it all began smelled not of magic nor destiny, but of fear. The air was so cold it felt like it was slicing Alara's thin skin, as if to remind her she didn't belong there. The entire village gathered around the clearing for the rite of the waning moon, a ceremony everyone extolled, except her. They said the ritual revealed who was worthy, who was strong, who carried the ancient blood capable of withstanding the energy of the guardian demons. But she, a small mortal, too thin, too quiet, too strange, had never been seen as someone who could bear even the whispers of that force. "Stay in the back, so you don't get in the way," whispered one of the village women, pushing her disdainfully. The gesture made Ilara stumble on the damp earth, staining the hem of the simple dress she had sewn herself. The humiliation burned, but she was used to it. She had grown up being treated as a living mistake, someone who breathed the wrong air and took up too much space. The looks that followed her were always the same: pity, irritation, judgment. Everyone knew she was different. Everyone knew she shouldn't be there. But that year, all the young people were summoned, including her. The ritual would begin when the moon reached its lowest point in the sky, and there was already a heavy aura hanging over the clearing. Torches flickered as if they feared their own flames, and the cutting wind tugged at the elders' cloaks. The stone circle in the center glowed with the demonic mark that centuries of superstition and sacrifices had burned into the surface, a symbol of power, fear, and reverence. Ilara tried to stand firm despite her trembling hands. Just a few more hours, she thought. She just needed to survive the ritual. Then she could return to her small, invisible, silent life, where at least the pain was predictable. But fate didn't want predictability that night. The drums began, and the ground vibrated beneath her fragile feet. The elders invoked ancient words, each syllable carrying a pressure that weighed on her chest. With each beat, each chant, something within Ilara seemed to sink deeper and deeper, as if the entire clearing was swallowing her. The people around her raised their hands, welcoming that dense, penetrating energy, but Ilara felt as if each vibration tore off a piece of her. "You're too pale," sneered a boy beside her. "Are you going to faint and embarrass everyone?" She tried to ignore him, but her body trembled. A dizziness began to grow at the base of her skull, rising like a dark tide. The torchlights began to flicker more than they should, and the symbol on the ground, the symbol glowed too brightly. When the moon finally touched its lowest point, the air exploded in a beam of violent energy, and everything unraveled around her. The shouts of the crowd became distant, the faces lost shape, the ground disappeared. Ilara tried to take a step back, but her body didn't respond. The energy hit her head on, piercing her like liquid fire. She felt her heart fail, her lungs lock. And then, in the last instant before everything went dark, she saw eyes. Eyes that didn't belong to any human. Eyes like slits of contained fire. Eyes that watched her as if they had known her since before time itself. She collapsed. Darkness came. Deep. Eternal. Or it should have been, because instead of the void came warmth. A dense, dangerous, almost possessive warmth that enveloped her skin like invisible hands. Ilara awoke with a start, gasping, and the world around her was not that of the village, nor the clearing, nor the ritual. It was a room, but not just any room. The walls were as black as obsidian, cut by dark red veins that pulsed as if they were breathing. Blue flames danced in torches encrusted in metal claws. The air was warm, but not suffocating. It was a living, conscious warmth. And she was lying down in a huge bed with shadowy curtains, dark silk sheets, and pillows too soft to exist in any mortal house. There was a faint scent in the air, something between smoke, burnt wood, and power, something that made her body recognize it even before her mind understood. Alara rose, dizzy, trying to understand where she was. That's when she heard the voice. A deep, grave, smooth voice, as dangerous as a sharp blade sliding slowly across the skin. "Finally awake, little mortal." The sound came from behind her. Her whole body froze. She turned slowly and saw him, sitting in a chair carved from black stone, with a posture too relaxed for someone who radiated so much danger, was him, the demon king, the primeval alpha, whose existence was whispered among forbidden and feared stories. He was tall, even sitting down. Black hair fell like living shadows over broad shoulders. The eyes were incandescent slits that could never belong to a human. Elegant horns were. They used to arch back, polished like sacred weapons. And his expression? His expression was an impossible mixture of interest, disdain, and something that seemed, for a moment, like curiosity. Ilara felt her heart beat too hard, as if it wanted to escape her chest. What happened?" she managed to ask, her voice almost inaudible. He stood up slowly, each movement so fluid that it seemed made of solid smoke. When he took a step towards her, the floor seemed to vibrate. "You fainted during the ritual," he said, approaching, his voice echoing throughout the room like a thunderous whisper, "and fell directly into my domain." Ilara shuddered. I should be dead, shouldn't I?" The question escaped before she could stop it. The demon raised an eyebrow, moving closer. Now he was close enough that she could feel the heat emanating from him, a heat almost intimate. "You should." He tilted his head, observing her as if studying her every tremor. "But you didn't die." Silence. Thick. Charged. He placed one of his hands, huge, warm, horribly attractive, on the edge of the bed, bringing his face closer to hers. "Which raises an interesting question, little mortal." His voice became lower, more intimate. "Why did you survive something that would kill anyone of your kind?" Ilara looked away, feeling her cheeks burn. I don't know." He touched her chin with just one finger, a light touch, but one that made her entire body react with a shiver that ran down her spine like fire. "Don't lie, not to me, nor to yourself. Something inside you answered the ritual's call." She swallowed hard. He was so close that his scent filled the air, that his presence crushed her in a strange way, both suffocating and comforting. Who are you?" she whispered. His eyes seemed to burn brighter as he answered. "Azrael, king of demons, primeval alpha, lord of the ancient shadows." The name vibrated in the air like a prophecy. Ilara couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't move. Azrael smiled, slow, dangerous, almost cruel. And now you are in my domain. The tip of his fingers slid down her neck, light as a warm breeze that burned. And in my bed. She recoiled instinctively, but he just watched, like someone who already knows the prey has nowhere to run. Why, why am I here? Her voice failed. Azrael gave a half smile, tilting his head. Because when you fell during the ritual, your body called out to mine. He took a step even closer, and I answered. Ilara shuddered. She didn't know if it was fear or something else she shouldn't be feeling. But why? She insisted. Azrael looked up at her as someone looks at something fragile but fascinating. Because you're not as weak as you think, he said. And because, for some reason I haven't yet deciphered, he brought his face closer to hers, almost touching. Your soul responded to mine. Ilara's heart skipped a beat. Her soul? They remained like that for a moment, he breathing slowly, warmly, dangerously. She trembling, trying to understand why his proximity made her body react that way. But before she could formulate another question, a wave of dizziness hit her. Her vision wavered. Azrael was quick. In a smooth motion, he held her by the shoulders before she fell. His hands were strong, firm, surprisingly careful. Still weak, he murmured. Your mortal body shouldn't have withstood the ritual, and yet it did. Ilara tried to pull away, but he wouldn't let her. He held her more firmly, not hurting, but making it clear that he decided when she moved. Eat, he ordered, indicating a tray of darb fruits and crystal clear water next to the bed. Your body needs to strengthen itself. I'm not hungry. His eyes flashed with something that looked like impatience. I didn't ask, I ordered. The tone made something inside her tremble, not with fear, but with something she couldn't name. Ilara picked up one of the fruits, her hands shaking. Azrael watched every movement like a predator watching the prey's first step. She brought the fruit to her mouth, and the taste was sweet and deep, as if it had been harvested from a forest that breathed magic. Azrael crossed his arms, satisfied. Good girl. The unexpected praise ran through Ilara like a flame. She looked away, ashamed of her own reaction. He continued, You will stay here until I figure out why your soul responded to mine. Don't try to run. Don't try to hide. My domain recognizes you now. Ilara felt the weight of the words. It wasn't just a prison. It was something bigger, deeper. Azrael turned and walked to the obsidian door. But before leaving, he stopped. He turned his face just enough so that she could see the incandescent glow of his eyes. There is no escaping me, Ilara, little mortal. His voice dropped low, almost a warm whisper. I don't harm what is mine. The door closed, and Ilara was alone. Or at least, she thought she was. For hours, she observed the room, trying to understand. Everything there pulsed with life, as if the very walls watched her every move. The bed was too big for one person. The air was saturated with his energy. It was like being inside a forbidden dream. Dangerous, wrong, captivating. And as she tried to stay focused, something strange pierced through her, a feeling of lack, as if his presence had left a silence too great. She hated feeling it. hated admitting it even more. When she finally lay down, the warmth of the sheets enveloped her, and her eyes grew heavy. And just before falling asleep, she heard that voice, not a physical voice, but a whisper inside her own chest. "Sleep, little mortal, I am near." Her breath trembled, and then the soft darkness received her. When Alara woke again, it was no longer night, or perhaps it was, because in that place the concept of time seemed not to exist. The light filtering through the silk curtains was reddish, alive, as if it came from the heart of an eternal bonfire. The room was silent, but the feeling of being watched was so strong that she sat up in bed immediately. And then she realized someone was there. Azrael was leaning against the wall, arms crossed over his broad chest, expression unreadable and incandescent eyes fixed on her, as if he had watched every second of her sleep. His silence had weight, power, and something else, something that Alara couldn't name, but that made her skin react. You sleep like someone who doesn't know they are in a predator's territory. His voice was low, brave, almost a dangerous purr. Alara tightened the sheet against her body. "I didn't know that you were here." Azrael raised an eyebrow. "I've been here since your dreams began to stir." She swallowed hard. He watched even when she dreamed? Why? Azrael took a step forward, and his shadow swallowed part of the room. The air became warmer, heavier, more filled with his presence. "Because your mortal body is still too fragile to be in my domain." He tilted his head slightly. "And because you murmured my name while sleeping." Ilara felt her face burn. "I didn't do that." "You did." The corner of his mouth lifted, slowly, almost begged for it. She looked away, annoyed by the heat that rose through her chest. "I didn't ask for anything." Azrael came closer, until she felt his warm scent envelop the air. Perhaps not with words. His tone became more intimate. "But your body spoke to me." Azrael stopped in front of the bed, without touching her, but close enough that the tension between them was almost palpable. "You don't understand, little mortal," he murmured. "When a soul responds to mine, I feel it, I hear it, I recognize it." Ilara finally found the courage to look up. "And what does that mean? That I belong to you?" The question came out before she could stop it. The air seemed to vibrate with the audacity. Azrael smiled, not a gentle smile. It was something dark, dangerous, seductive. "Not yet," he replied, "but you are dangerously close to it." Alara shuddered. "I don't want to belong to anyone." "Everyone belongs to someone." He ran a finger across his own lips, thoughtfully. "The difference is that you can choose to whom." She felt her chest tighten. "And you want me to choose you?" Azrael leaned forward, bringing his face closer to hers. The heat emanating from him was so intense that it seemed to burn without touching. "I don't need you to choose." His voice came out as a warm whisper. "I need you to acknowledge." Ilara tried to back away, but the bed wouldn't allow it. Azrael noticed, and that made his eyes gleam with something dangerous. The distance between them was too short, and the silence too long. She was the one who broke it. "Why me?" she asked. "There are 1,000 souls stronger, more worthy, more suitable than I." Azrael straightened his posture. "Because no other soul has dared to touch mine." He took a step to the side and turned his face away, as if admitting it irritated him, and because you should have died, but you didn't. He walked to a stone table, picked up a small vial, and returned with slow steps. Ilara felt his energy alter the air around her, like a storm forming. Drink. He handed her the vial. What is this? Something to strengthen your body. His fingers touched hers only for an instant when passing the vial. The touch was light, but sent a shiver up her arm. I don't intend for you to faint again. Ilara hesitated. Asriel raised his chin, staring at her intently. I could force you, he said calmly, but I prefer when you obey of your own free will. The phrase went through Ilara with a shock she didn't want to feel. Asriel noticed. Of course he noticed. She took a sip. The liquid was hot, sweet, and bitter at the same time. Something inside her seemed to open up. Asriel watched closely. Good. The praise went through her skin like warmth. When he moved away, Ilara took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. What's going to happen to me? She asked. Asriel didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, where the curtains fluttered as if fearing his approach. He rested a hand on the sill, looking out at the reddish horizon of his domain. That depends, he finally replied, on what you discover about yourself. What does that mean? You didn't fall here by accident. He turned his head slowly, his incandescent eyes meeting hers. There's something in you that the ritual awakened, something that was dormant, something that belongs more to my world than to yours. Ilara shook her head. I'm just a girl, nothing special. Wrong. He approached again, stopping so close that she felt the heat of his body through the silk sheets. You are a little mortal who crossed a veil that should have destroyed you. He lowered his hand, bringing it close to her chest, and yet your heart kept beating. His hand didn't touch her, but it was so close that Ilara felt the heat radiating. Do you know what that means? He asked. She swallowed. No. It means your soul isn't as mortal as you think. Ilara's body seemed to vibrate. Don't say that. Fear ran through her voice. Why? Asriel cast an incisive look. Why are you so afraid of the truth? She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. Because it was all too much. Asriel moved his hand closer to her chest, a few millimeters from her skin. I can feel it, he murmured. There's power here. No! Ilara recoiled instinctively, pressing herself against the headboard. No, I don't want this. I didn't ask for this. Asriel took a step back, not out of submission, but out of respect. Or something like it. His gaze softened slightly. Do you think the world is kind to those who don't fit in? He asked. Do you think your village ever treated you like someone who deserved to exist? He tilted his head. You're afraid of being more than they said, more than they made you believe. Ilara's breath caught. I just want to be normal. Israel walked slowly, sitting on the edge of the bed. The mattress sank slightly, bringing her closer to him, but he didn't touch her. Normal is what they made you believe was all you could be, he said. But there's a force in you, little mortal, a force that the ritual awakened, and that called to me. A tense silence fell between them. I don't want to call to you, she whispered, vulnerable. Israel smiled, not cruelly, not arrogantly, but sadly. For an instant, yes, Something crossed his eyes, something that seemed human. I know. He leaned forward slightly. But your soul didn't ask for your permission. Ilara looked away, breathing fast. Israel continued, I'm going to show you my domain. You need to understand where you are. He got up and held out his hand to her. Ilara hesitated. I won't hurt you, he said. If I wanted to, I would have already. She looked at his hand, large, strong, too warm, and after a few seconds placed her own hand there. Azriel's heat went through her entire body like a shock. He lifted her up easily, bringing her body closer to his. His height made her feel even smaller, but strangely safe. Azriel opened the obsidian door with a touch, revealing an immense corridor, lit by blue flames that danced on the living black stone walls. They walked side by side, but not as equals. Azriel filled the space with his presence, while Ilara tried to keep up. This is the lower limbo, he explained. Territory of the ancient demons. Nothing here is made for mortals. Ilara looked at everything with a mixture of fascination and fear. The flames seemed alive, as if whispering secrets. The black stone pulsed with energy. Dark creatures moved in the distance, but retreated at the presence of Azriel. You rule all this? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Yes, he glanced sideways at her, and now you are part of it. Ilara stopped abruptly. No, I don't belong here. Azriel turned to her, approaching slowly. His eyes ran over her face as if reading a hidden truth. Then why are you alive? He asked. Why did your soul withstand my call? Ilara opened her mouth, but found no answer. Azriel took another step. Why can I feel you? He murmured. Even when you're far away? Even when you sleep? She backed away, her body filling, her hand trembling. I don't know. I swear I don't know. But you will find out, he replied. With us, together. Ilara felt her heart clench strangely, fear and something else. Azrael extended his hand again. Come, there is more you need to see. They walked to a gigantic balcony. The horizon was a mix of living shadows and distant flames. It was beautiful and terrible, a world that seemed to devour everything weak. This world kills mortals, said Azrael, devours, tears, destroys. He turned to her. But it hasn't touched you. Ilara felt the weight of his words. Because, did you protect me? Azrael hesitated. It was only a second, but it was enough to reveal something that seemed impossible in him. Conflict. Yes, he finally replied, because I couldn't help it. Ilara took a step toward him without realizing it, moved by something she didn't understand, something that seemed to call from within her own chest. Azrael noticed, and, for the first time, he took a single step back. Don't do that, he murmured. What? Don't get so close. Why? His eyes burned even brighter. Because I'm not safe. His voice came out strained, and you stir something in me that I don't know how to control. Her heart beat too fast. She felt her throat dry. I'm not doing anything. You are. Azrael took a deep breath. You're alive. You're breathing. You're looking at me like I'm not the monster I am. Ilara took half a step forward, encouraged by something she couldn't even name. You're not a monster. Azrael closed his eyes for an instant. When he opened them, they were laden with something devastating. "Don't say that," he murmured. "You don't know what that means." Ilara took another step. Now she was too close. Close enough to feel his warm breath. Close enough to feel the magnetism that drew her body as if it were inevitable. Azriel was fighting against something inside himself. That was clear. Ilara. He said her name for the first time, and the sound ran across her skin like fire. "If you take one more step, I won't be able to stop." Her breath trembled, but before she could decide, a tremor ran through the ground. Violent, thunderous, dangerous. Azrael instantly placed himself in front of her, his body creating an impenetrable barrier. A dark energy tore across the horizon, and a voice, an ancient, cruel voice, echoed through the domain. "Finally found you, brother." Azrael gritted his teeth. "Not now." Ilara grabbed his arm instinctively. Who is that?" He turned his face slowly, his eyes burning with pure fury. "My oldest enemy." His expression darkened. "And he's come for you." The ground trembled beneath Ilara's feet as if the domain itself had held its breath. The flames in the torches curved, lengthening shadows that seemed to try to hide. The voice that echoed on the horizon, dense and rough, seemed to come from everywhere at once, as if the entire space were an ancient throat spitting out threat. She clung tighter to Azrael's arm, her fingers sinking into his warm skin, as if that could anchor her. Azrael didn't push her away. On the contrary, his body stiffened, the muscles beneath his skin becoming living stone as he stared into the distance with incandescent eyes. "Stay behind me," he murmured, and it wasn't a request, it was a decree. But, mixed with the order, there was something that surprised her: worry. The air tore in front of them. A black, deep fissure opened on the horizon, swallowing the landscape with a maw of liquid shadows. From within it, something began to emerge. First, a pair of long, pointed horns, like thorns of a creature that should never have been born. Then, a tall, robust body, enveloped by an aura that seemed to smell of ashes and ancient blood. The eyes, when they lit up, were like burning coals, not golden like Azrael's, but a deep, cruel red. He smiled, and the smile had nothing human about it. "It's been so long, brother," said the figure, taking a few steps onto the balcony, the ground bowing beneath his feet. "And yet you continue to hide behind walls and titles." Ilara felt the words hit Alara's chest even before he responded. The Demon King raised his chin. "Get out of my domain, Kale." The figure laughed, the laughter echoing like metal scraping stone. "Your domain has always been my favorite thorn." His eyes finally landed on Alara, and the change was instantaneous. The expression became hungrier, more interested. "Ah, there she is, the little mortal you tried to hide." Ilara took half a step back, instinctively. Azrael's arm went back, finding her waist, holding her steady. His touch was firm, possessive, as if declaring silently, "She is under my protection." "You will not touch her," Azrael growled, and his voice came out deep enough to make the walls. "A mortal surviving the ritual's call," Kale continued, as if he hadn't been interrupted, "and falling directly into the heart of your domain?" He tilted his head. "I'm not an idiot, Azrael. I know what this means. I know what she is." Ilara felt their eyes on her, like she was a centerpiece in a game she never asked to play. Her throat went dry. "What Am I? The question escaped, soft. Kale smiled, red eyes gleaming with malice. You didn't tell her. How lovely. He took another step. Little mortal, you didn't fall here by mistake. You are a bridge, an echo between worlds, a soul born with cracks where power spills through. You are half light, half shadow, and because of that, both his world and yours will try to claim you. The words hammered inside her mind, but all she could manage was a trembling whisper. That's a lie. Azrael remained silent for a few seconds, and the silence of the Demon King hurt more than any confirmation. She turned her face to him, almost begging, Azrael. Kale laughed, pleased with the reaction. He knew, he answered in his brother's place. He knew from the moment he felt you cross the veil. He knew you were the only living bridge capable of tearing the border between worlds without dying. He opened his arms. And what does he do? Hides you in his own bed. Blood rushed to Alara's face, burning with shame and confusion. She looked at Azrael, her chest tight. You knew? Azrael finally faced her. There was fire in his eyes, but it wasn't directed at her. It was anger at himself, his brother, fate, a story too old to tell. I suspected, he corrected, his voice tight. And you were going to tell me when? The raw vulnerability in her voice hit him harder than any blow. For an instant, the Demon King didn't seem like the monster the world described, just someone trapped between his own nature and something he didn't know how to touch. When you were strong enough to hear it, he replied, in a tone that almost sounded like an apology. Kale made a sound of boredom. So dramatic, he sighed. It doesn't matter. What matters is that she is the key we've all been waiting for, the bridge that can break down the barrier once and for all and bring chaos to her world. His red eyes locked on her, and I've come to get her. Azrias stepped forward, his body placing itself completely between Kale and her. You're not taking her. Kale smiled, a cold smile. And how are you going to stop me? Are you going to break the pact, Azrael? Are you going to face not only me, but all the ancients who are waiting for a gap between the worlds? He tilted his head. Are you going to sacrifice your throne for a mortal? The question hung in the air. Alara felt her heart stop for a second. Azrael was silent. The answer was already written in the fire of his eyes, but he still hadn't put it into words. Kale smiled wider. That's what I thought. He raised his hand, and a dark energy began to form around his fingers. Then I'll take what is rightfully mine. The ground trembled harder, a fissure opening under Alara's feet. She lost her balance and stumbled forward, but Azrael caught her and pulled her against his chest. His warmth enveloped her, firm, protective. She felt his heart beating fast, uneven, more human than it should. Close your eyes, he murmured against her hair, and whatever happens, don't let go of my hand. She obeyed, not because he ordered it, but because, for some terribly irrational reason, she trusted him. The air exploded in a flash of light, and Alara felt as if she was being pulled from the inside, torn from her own form. The scream that tried to escape her throat never came to be. Then, suddenly, everything ceased. The scent of Azrael's domain, smoke, heat, living stone, disappeared. Another scent flooded the air, damp earth, leaves, people. She opened her eyes. She was back. The clearing, the circle of stones, the symbol burned into the ground, the entire village around, as on the night of the ritual. But now, everyone was looking at the center of the circle with wide-eyed fear. Alara looked down. She was inside the circle, And beside her, as out of place as a storm in the middle of a calm, was Asriel, but not the version of him she knew in the domain. Here his presence was even more overwhelming. The contrast with the mortal world made every detail more evident. The impossible height, the horns, the burning eyes, the aura of power that seemed to tear the air. Screams began. Demon! Monster! He brought her back! It's him, the king of the underworld! People cowered, crossing symbols of protection, recoiling in despair. Children cried. Elders murmured prayers. Alara felt the old weight of shame fall on her shoulders, but now, mixed with something different, indignation. The village that had always treated her like a mistake, again, now looking at her as an omen of misfortune, as if she were to blame for having survived. Asriel took a half step forward, his gaze cutting through the crowd. Stay where you are, his voice echoed like thunder, and no one dared to move. If anyone touches her, I'll reduce this place to ashes. Panic surged. Alara turned to him. Asriel, stop! You can't! I can, he interrupted, his eyes blazing, and I will, if necessary. She held his wrist, feeling the heat pulsing beneath his skin. That's not how you protect someone, Asriel. That's not how you break a cycle. The words came out before she thought, and somehow they were right. Kael emerged seconds later, like a shadow that refuses to be left behind. He appeared at the edge of the circle, his presence as heavy as a nightmare come to life. The villagers recoiled even further, some falling to their knees. How comforting to see the mortal world again, he murmured, eyeing the people like choosing a feast. So weak, so breakable. His eyes landed on Alara, and his smile widened. You can't protect her here, brother. This is her domain, but the power is mine. No, Asriel growled. The power here is hers. All eyes turned to Alara, including her own, as if trying to see within herself something she had never been allowed to see. What do you mean? Kael laughed. She can barely stand without trembling. He took a step into the circle, and the symbol on the ground glowed an intense red. The bridge exists to be used. And I don't intend to waste this gift. Asriel stepped between Kael and Alara again. The circle of stones trembled with the presence of the two. It was the confrontation no one should see, and, at the same time, what destiny seemed to have awaited for eras. Don't touch her, the Demon King repeated, lower, more dangerous, as if each word were a blade. Kael raised his hands, theatrically. Then stop me. Break the pact. Renounce the throne. Give up everything you are for her. The silence that followed was so heavy that even the wind seemed to cease. Alara felt her heart ache. She looked at Asriel, breathless. He was torn. She saw it. Saw the weight of centuries on his shoulders. The weight of a title that was not just power, but prison. Saw the conflict between duty and something that burned in him whenever he looked at her. And, for the first time, she understood. He was not just the Demon King. He was someone who had never been able to choose anything until she appeared. Asriel's eyes turned to Alara, and there was something raw, vulnerable, almost human there. If I renounce, he said, his voice hoarse, as if each word tore at his throat, I lose my right to protect her, to be near, to be anywhere where her soul is. Kael smiled, satisfied. Exactly. You become nothing more than shadow, an echo of yourself, just a memory. Alara felt the world spin. She took a step forward without thinking. Azrael, no. Her voice came out low, urgent. You're not going to sacrifice who you are because of me. You don't understand, he replied, his eyes burning into her. Since you fell into my domain, nothing in me has remained untouched. His voice trembled, slightly, but real. You shattered my certainties, my solitude, my throne. For the first time, I want. It hit her as hard as the energy from the ritual. Ilara realized that the whole world had never wanted anything from her, never desired her presence, her voice, her gaze. And now, here, in the middle of that clearing that had always treated her like a mistake, the most feared creature of all admitted to wanting her. Her chest warmed in a new way, painful, beautiful. Kale rolled his eyes. Oh, please, interdimensional romantic drama now? He raised his hand, shadows coiling around his fingers. Enough of this. I'll take what's mine. The dark energy shot towards Alara. Azrael moved without thinking. He placed his body in front of her, taking the full impact on his chest. The sound of the collision echoed through the clearing like thunder. The world seemed to fold for a second. Azrael's body was thrown back, falling to his knees. Ilara screamed his name, running, holding him by the shoulders. The smell of burning iron filled the air. The skin on his chest was marked, as if something had tried to tear away part of his essence. Even so, he raised his face to her, a half smile on his lips. I said, I don't hurt what's mine. You can't put yourself in front of everything. She felt the tears streaming down, hot, furious. I won't let you destroy yourself for me. Kale chuckled, approaching closer, the dark energy growing around him. Cry if you want, little bridge. When I'm done, he'll be just a shadow, and you will be the key I'll use until I break it. The people around watched, helpless, caught between fear and fascination. The hierarchy that had always trapped them, demons on top, mortals at the bottom, sacrifices, fear, renunciation, was scarred there. And it was in that instant that Ilara realized something. She wasn't just an object to be fought over, not prey, not a prize. She was a bridge. And a bridge isn't just a passage. It's a choice. It's a junction. It's a border that can decide when to open and when to close. She squeezed her chest, feeling her heart beat erratically, but not from fear, from decision. The ritual had torn something inside her, but it had also opened a space that she could fill with anything, fear, submission, or something else. She stood up, leaving Azrael kneeling, and took a step forward. The circle seemed to respond. The mark on the ground glowed more strongly, as if it recognized her. Enough, she said, her voice firm for the first time in her life. Kale raised an eyebrow. Oh, the little mortal has found her voice. You're right about one thing, she continued. I am a bridge. I connect worlds. But, her eyes sought Azrael's for an instant, I can also choose what I let pass. The energy around Kale intensified, but the glow of the symbol at Alara's feet began to grow, spreading across the clearing. A murmur ran through the crowd. This isn't possible, muttered one of the elders. She's activating the seal without sacrifice. Kale frowned, annoyed. You have no control over this. You are an instrument, not a will. He raised his hand for another attack, but this time, Alara didn't back down. She took a deep breath. She remembered Azrael's warmth, the way he held her when the world was falling apart, the way he looked at her as if she were more than the whole world had ever made her believe. She remembered the humiliation, the whispers, the laughter behind her back. She remembered all the times she tried to become smaller to fit into a space that wasn't made for her, and in an instant, she decided, never again. The power responded. Something inside her opened up, not like a tear, but like a flower that finally decides to face the sun. The energy of the circle rose, passing through her legs, her spine, her chest, until it came out through her eyes, her voice, her hands. When Kael launched the next blow, the dark energy hit an invisible barrier, a diffuse light, not white, but a strange mix of shadow and glow, like living twilight. "I am not yours," Alara said, her voice firm. "I am not an object. I am not a tool. I am not a key. I am a bridge, and I choose who I open myself to." Kael's eyes narrowed, surprised. "And who do you open yourself to, little one? To me or to him?" She turned her face slowly, meeting Azrael's gaze. He was still kneeling, his hand pressing his wounded chest, but his eyes didn't ask for anything. They didn't demand. They didn't charge. There was only a contained desire, a silent fear that she would deny him, and a painful acceptance of the possibility of losing her. He seemed, for the first time, vulnerable, and that broke something in her. "I choose," she said, taking a deep breath, "myself first." An absolute silence fell. "I choose not to be used by anyone. I choose not to be sacrificed to maintain ancient pacts that I never signed. I choose not to carry the guilt of a world that has always rejected me." She raised her hands, feeling the power increasing. And after that, she took a step towards Azrael. "I choose to share what I am with those who saw me, not as a mistake, but as strength." Azrael's eyes widened, the internal fire trembling. Kael laughed, incredulous. "You are breaking the hierarchy, little one." He approached the edge of the circle, facing the energy that trembled around her. "Demons are not chosen, they choose." Azrael stood up, slowly, with effort. "I accept," he said, suddenly. Kael turned to him, annoyed. "What are you doing?" The Demon King took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the delicate figure of Alara, who now seemed bigger than the stone circle itself. "I accept," he said, "and if that means breaking the pact, renouncing the throne, facing the ancients, I accept." He walked until he was next to her, inside the circle. "Let them come." "But they won't have her," the people of the village murmured, shocked. Not for seeing one demon defying another, but for seeing a millennial hierarchy breaking before their eyes. "Do you know what you're doing?" Kael snarled. "If you renounce the throne, you will cease to be king. You will cease to be Alpha. Your powers will be reduced. You will be hunted by all those who await your fall." He laughed, almost in despair. "All this for a mortal?" Azrael did not take his eyes off Ilara when he replied, "It's not for a mortal. It's for her." The way he said her made Ilara's heart ache beautifully. "I won't allow this!" Kael roared. He lunged forward, crossing the boundary of the circle, trying to reach Ilara by force. But this time, he didn't find a passive bridge. He found a conscious barrier. Ilara raised her hands, and the energy that rose from the symbol expanded, forming an arc of light around her and Azrael. Kael slammed into the barrier, the impact echoing in a crash that made the surrounding trees bend their branches. He screamed, not from pain, but from rage. "You don't have the power to repel me for long, little one." Ilara felt the pressure of the attack like a weight on her chest. Her body trembled. The power inside her was vast, but still new, unstable. Azrael noticed. He approached from behind her, without touching, just placing his hands beside hers, as if surrounding the movement. "Let me help," he murmured, his voice warm in her ear. "Not from the outside, from within." She hesitated for a second, her heart racing at his closeness, at his breath touching her skin, at the hidden promise in every untouched inch. "How?" "Trust me." The words gravitated within her like an oath. She closed her eyes, feeling Asriel's energy approach, not just physically, but deeply. He didn't invade, didn't take, asked, waited, and she was the one who opened, not her eyes, her soul. The connection that until then had been a whisper became a door. Ilara felt his warmth flow through her, not as a force that dominates, but as a presence that fits into the space that had always been there, waiting. The power of both merged, a joining of shadow and light, of hellfire and mortal fragility, transforming into a third thing that belonged to neither world, but that could sustain them. When they opened their eyes, together, the barrier in front of Kael had become something more solid, more intense. He tried to advance again and was pushed back, this time with enough violence to make him fall to his knees. The entire clearing vibrated. The whole world seemed to vibrate. A new mark began to form on the ground, around the old symbol. It wasn't just the mark of demons. It was something that carried the signature of two intertwined powers. Azrael felt it, as did she. This was a pact, but not one of those that enslaved. It was a pact of mutual choice. Kael rose, staggering. "You are setting a precedent that cannot be undone," he said, his voice filled with fury and fear. "Mortals choosing demons, demons renouncing thrones, bridges refusing to be just tools. Chaos will swallow everything." "Then let it swallow," Ilara replied, with a calmness she didn't know she possessed. Better the chaos of choice than the order of oppression. A strange silence fell, heavy, and at the same time liberating. Asriel smiled, slightly, beside her. "No one has ever spoken to him like that," he murmured. "Not even to me." She smiled back, still trembling. "Not even to myself." Kael took a step back. The shadows around him trembled, unstable. "This doesn't end here," he declared. "The ancients will feel it. They will come after you. They will test this bridge until it breaks." He cast a last fiery glance at his brother. "And when it breaks, you'll wish you had remained king." Asriel didn't flinch. "Let them come." He squeezed Ilara's hand lightly, and she realized she was still holding it, without even noticing. "We will face them together." Kael retreated, his body dissolving into shadows that, for a brief moment, seemed less solid, less invincible. The rift that had brought him closed, swallowing his presence like a last echo. The clearing remained silent. For a few seconds, no one dared to speak. Then, slowly, as if awakening from an ancient dream, the people of the village began to notice something. The symbol on the ground had changed. It didn't ask for blood. It didn't demand sacrifice. It pulsed, yes, with energy, but it was an energy that embraced, not threatened. One of the elders swallowed hard. "The ritual has been rewritten." He looked at Ilara with something she had never received from them, respect. She broke the curse. Ilara felt her knees weaken. Her tired, exhausted body finally took its toll. Azrael caught her before she fell, wrapping his arms around her with surprising care. "Breathe," he murmured, his voice soft. "I'm here." She rested her forehead against his chest, feeling his heart strong again, no longer erratic, but firm, constant, anchored in her. You really renounced it? She asked weakly. The throne? He stared at her for a moment. There was something light in his gaze, an absence of weight she had never seen before. I don't know if it's official yet, he said, an ironic glint in his voice. But yes. He wrapped an arm more firmly around her. If the power I had depended on losing you, it wasn't worth it. Her chest tightened with a sweet ache. You're crazy. Probably, he smiled wryly. But if it's madness to choose to stand beside someone who ignites something in you, I don't regret it. The village was still watching them, not knowing what to do. No rituals, no answers, not enough fear to go back to hating. Someone whispered, "She's not flawed." And another murmured, "She saved us from centuries of sacrifices." For the first time in her life, the words around her didn't diminish her. It hurt because the past wouldn't disappear, but now there was a different ground beneath her feet, one she had helped build. What happens now? She lifted her face to Azriel, her voice low. To me, to you, to us? Azriel took a deep breath, as if savoring that last word. Now, you choose. He carefully helped her to her feet, keeping a hand on her back, like an anchor. You can stay here, if you want. Live among the mortals who will one day learn to respect what you are. He swallowed hard. And I will leave. I will be a shadow. I will watch from afar. I won't come any closer. He almost couldn't say that sentence. Or, his eyes lit up with an intensity that made the whole world shrink. Or you come with me. His voice was a husky whisper. Not as a prisoner, not as a bridge, but as an equal. He held her gaze. I am no longer king. I have no throne to offer you. I only have a domain in reconstruction, a scarred body, and a heart that you taught to be silent, but that no longer obeys. The world seemed to hold its breath with her. The village, the circle, the mark on the ground, the trees, everything waited. Not like before, when she was carried along by the flow of other people's decisions, but now, when she had a real choice. She could stay, live a simple life. Maybe, years later, she would be seen as a living legend, the girl who rewrote a ritual. She could walk without being completely humiliated, but she would also live with a void that she already recognized, that space in her chest where Azriel's presence had entered like lightning, illuminating a place she didn't even know existed. She turned to the village. She saw faces that, for the first time, didn't look at her as a nuisance. She saw fear, yes, but also gratitude. She saw possibility. She turned back to Azriel. She saw risk, she saw danger, she saw shadow, she saw warmth. She saw the only gaze that, from the beginning, had never seen her as too small, but bigger than she allowed herself to be. Her heart chose before her mind could argue. She took a step towards him, then another, and another. When she was an arm's length away, she felt her chest tremble. I don't know what will happen if I go with you, she confessed. Maybe the ancients will attack us. Maybe your domain will crumble. Maybe I won't be able to sustain this bridge all the time. She took a deep breath. But I know what happens if I stay. I will never forget you, and I don't want to live like that. Azriel closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, there was something shining there that mixed with the fire, something almost wet. Are you sure? He asked anyway. I am a demon, Ilara. I won't be gentle all the time. My world is harsh. My instincts are dangerous. His fingers trembled slightly as they approached her face, but didn't touch it yet. But if you come, I will spend eternity learning to be something I never needed to be before, worthy of being chosen. Her voice came out almost in a whisper. I don't need you to be perfect. I need you to be real. She took the final step. Now their breaths mingled. I choose you, and I choose myself too. For an instant, the world seemed to break, not in pain, but in freedom. The energy around them expanded, and the mark on the ground shone one last time before stabilizing, as if saying, "It is done." Azriel finally let his hand touch her face. The touch was both reverent and hungry, as if he had been waiting for this since the beginning of time. He lowered his forehead, touching hers, closing his eyes. Ilara felt his warmth envelop everything, not as a prison, but as a home. There was no kiss, not yet. The desire was there, dense, throbbing, magnetizing the two, but held back. Because what existed there was greater than physical. It was a decision, a soul connection. They stayed like that for a few seconds that seemed eternal. The village watched, silent, as if witnessing the rewriting of something sacred. "Then let's go," Azriel murmured, his voice low, husky. "But now, if you come, it won't be as a subject, nor as a bridge." He opened his eyes, the inner fire reflecting her image. "It will be as queen of a world that doesn't yet exist, but that we will build." She smiled, small, tired, but real. "I never wanted to be queen of anything." "Then just be what you are," he replied, "and I'll organize the rest around that." She gave a short, nervous laugh. "Do you really think you can organize an entire world around me?" "No," he smiled back, "but I'd love to try." The shadows rose around them, not as a threat, but as an invitation. The village retreated, respectful, for the first time not out of fear, but out of recognition that something greater was happening. Alara looked back one last time, not to ask for permission, not to apologize, but to mark the farewell. Then she took Azriel's hand. And they left the clearing together. The shadows swallowed them. And this time, she entered his domain without fainting, without being dragged, without being pushed. She entered like someone walking through a door they chose. Again, the heat greeted her. The world of blue flames, obsidian walls, living corridors. But something was different. Not in the place, in her. She no longer felt like an intruder. There was a resonance between the domain and the energy within her, as if they were finally speaking the same language. Azriel led her to the same balcony as before. The horizon was still a sea of shadows and fire, but now she saw beauty there. She saw the potential of something that could be rebuilt. "So," she looked at him, a little shy, a little bold. "No throne, no title, no ancient pact. What are you now?" Azriel watched her for a moment and shrugged, with a half smile that mixed ancient arrogance and something new, almost light. "I am still the demon everyone fears," he replied. "But, above all, I am what you decide I can be, by your side." Her heart warmed. That's a lot of power in the hand of a small mortal. "You were never small," he said seriously. "It was the world that insisted on diminishing you to fit its own measures." She looked at the horizon thoughtfully. "What if I'm wrong?" "Then we're wrong together." He approached slowly, like that first time in bed, but now there was no fear between them, just expectation. I can't promise I won't give in to my instincts, that I won't be jealous, intense, possessive. He got close enough that his heat completely invaded her. But I can promise that even when I'm wrong, I'll remember that you chose me, and I'll fight to deserve it. Her body reacted to the proximity in a way she already knew. Short breath, skin on alert, heart racing. There was desire there, yes, an almost unbearable magnetism, but still contained within a respectful limit. She raised her hand and touched his chest, right over the mark that Kale had left. "It will hurt," she murmured, "many times." "It will," he agreed, without trying to soften it. "But for the first time, I won't be alone." He raised his hand, touching the line of her jaw delicately. "And neither will you." The silence between them became thick, electric. The kind of silence that doesn't ask for words, just surrender. This time, she was the one who moved closer, reducing the final distance. They were a breath away, breathing each other. "Now you can kiss me, throneless demon king," she whispered, a mischievous smile mixed with the tremor in her voice. "Before I change my mind." Azriel let out a low, satisfied laugh, and finally gave in. The kiss was not gentle, not to begin with. There were centuries of restraint, fear, power, hunger there. But there was also care, as if each movement said, "You can stop me if you want." She didn't want to. His hand went to the back of her neck, pulling her closer, while the other slid down her back, marking the presence, the newly conquered emotional territory. The world around seemed to distort, not into destruction, but into expansion. The energy of the domain responded, flames rising, shadows bowing, as if recognizing a new order established there. Not that of fear, but that of choice. When they separated, finally, their breathing was uneven. She rested her face on his chest, laughing between exhaustion and relief. "That was dangerous." "Everything with you is dangerous, little mortal," he murmured, running his fingers through her hair, "and I wouldn't change anything." Time began to acquire a new rhythm after that. There was no more formal throne, but the domain still needed someone to sustain it. Minor demons tested the limits, ancients watched from afar, spirits tried to approach the new bridge. Ilara learned, little by little, to use the power that the ritual had awakened, not as a weapon, but as a filter. She measured, balanced, allowed certain passages, denied others. Azrael, in turn, became more than king. He became the guardian of a world in transformation. Instead of just ruling with fear, he needed to relearn how to inspire loyalty, how to build something that didn't depend on blind hierarchy. They fought, often. She confronted him when he gave in to the old instincts of absolute control. He teased her when she tried to carry everything alone. But in each discussion, there was an invisible line that neither crossed, that of destroying each other. And whenever one strayed too far, the other pulled back. Not always with words, sometimes with a touch in the dark, sometimes with a shared silence on the balcony, looking at the fiery horizon, sometimes with an "I'm here," whispered between a sigh and another. On a certain night, long after Kale had disappeared into the shadows, and the rumors about the bridge had spread among the worlds, Ilara sat on the edge of the bed that had once received her unconscious, frail Eve, lost. Azrael entered, silent, and leaned against the door, watching her. "Thinking of running?" he asked, with that tone that mixed jest and truth. She smiled, without turning around. "If I wanted to run, I would have run back in the clearing." "Hmm." He approached, stopping behind her. "And why didn't you?" She raised her eyes forward to their blurred reflection on a polished surface. There was no fear there. There were two presences that recognized each other. Because, for the first time, I felt like I was choosing something that the whole world said was forbidden, she replied. And she looked up, meeting his gaze. Because you looked at me as if I were more than the ritual, more than the bridge, more than the curse, as if I were me. He raised a hand and touched her cheek with the same care as the first time. You are the only thing in this world that I can't classify. He smiled slightly. And I know monsters of all kinds. She laughed, tilting her face into the touch. And you, Azriel, who are you now? He thought for a moment, the answer coming slowly. I am the demon who stopped being a king to learn to be a man, alongside someone who the world called weak, but who rewrote the pacts of both worlds. He leaned in, bringing his lips close to her ear. I am your danger and your safe harbor, if you allow it. She closed her eyes, a shiver running down her spine. I allow it. The word came out lightly, but carried the weight of an oath. He pulled her back, making her lie down, this time without fainting, without scares, without rituals. Just two beings who chose to be together, even with everything saying otherwise. And while the world around them adjusted to the new order, demons watching, mortals dreaming of rituals that didn't ask for blood, elders gnashing their teeth before a bridge that didn't bend, they found in each other the balance between shadow and light that had always been denied them. In the end, what broke the hierarchy was not an impossible power, nor a grandiose war. It was a choice. A small mortal lying in the alpha demon's bed, not as a sacrifice, not as a victim, but as a partner. And a demon king who chose to lose the crown to gain a heart he would never have by force. Years later, if it was even possible to measure years there, many would tell the story of the bridge that fainted in the ritual and woke up in the demon's bed, thinking that the scandal was in those details. But the truth is that the bigger scandal was another. She woke up to herself, and the whole world had to adjust to that. If you've made it this far, felt the weight, the pain, and the sweetness of this story, tell me, at what point did you realize that Eve stopped being a small mortal and became a non-negotiable force? If you would like to experience more stories in this universe, with other demons, other bridges, other broken pacts, leave your comment, because it is from what you feel that new worlds are born. And if this romance between a fragile soul and a demon king without a throne has moved you, closely follow the next chapters, because each choice, like hers, opens space for even deeper, darker, and brighter narratives.